Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. You closed so we don't have to pay. What? That's not even almost logical. This is why Karens always go to stores 5 minutes before closing. They're tipping their hands. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Group of Karens try to skip out on restaurant bill over hollandaise sauce. The place I work at is a hole-in-the-wall restaurant in a really small farming town. Think of Dog River from the show Corner Gas, and it describes the vibe of the place. The outside's pretty run down since the upstairs tenants are car farmers, and there's broken down cars all over the property. The food's really good, and it's become the meeting place for a lot of locals, mostly farmers and old-timers. The interior of the place is really cute, and it has an old-fashioned vibe to it. The food's amazing, in my opinion, and prices are pretty cheap. So we get a group of 3 middle-aged women come in, and they're instantly complaining about the outside of the place being messy and run-down looking. I guess they're from a nearby city and saw that our restaurant has excellent reviews on Google, and they wanted to try the place out. The server kindly told them that the restaurant has no control over what the outside of the place looks like, made a "it's a good thing you don't have to eat outside" joke, and the women got offended and complained that we weren't taking their suggestion seriously. They all ordered Eggs Benedict, and one of them asked for it to be made without hollandaise sauce. They also complained about service being slow, but given we were pretty slammed that day and we only have one cook, we were doing our best. The lady that wanted no hollandaise sauce came to the counter and rudely told us to add hollandaise sauce, but she wanted it on the side because she wasn't sure if she liked it. We offered to let her sample some, but she refused. Once their food was served, she tried to send back the sauce, but the server told her that we couldn't take it off the bill because we can't serve that sauce to someone else. She complained, but the server stuck to her guns and told her next time try the sample when it's offered if she isn't sure she likes something. We'll usually let people sample stuff so this exact scenario doesn't happen. It was close to closing, so stopped serving new customers and we started doing our closing duties. We didn't stop serving people who were already there, however. The women all of a sudden got up and left, and we realized they hadn't paid yet. The server chased them outside and told them they forgot to pay. They told the server that since we closed while we were serving them, they thought they didn't have to pay. The server told them to pay, and they told the server that since the hollandaise sauce wasn't taken off the bill, they weren't paying. The server told them once again they had to pay for the food they ordered, and since there was nothing wrong with the sauce, it was not coming off the bill. The server threatened to call the police if they didn't pay, and if they left, she would record their license plate and they'd be banned from the restaurant as well. They reluctantly paid and, of course, didn't tip. I still don't understand how they thought they could have gotten away without paying. They kept saying, "You're closed, we don't have to pay." And our second story. Don't worry, you won't have to answer any questions, or how I learned not to trust managers. In today's tale from Hypermarket, I'll tell you about the worst hour I've ever spent at work. Worse than going back to work after my boyfriend of almost 4 years dumped me unexpectedly. Worse than getting my first ever migraine while in a check stand. Worse, in fact, than anything I ever dealt with on a Black Friday. It was the time I got loaned to another department. I should perhaps explain how the departments at my store were broken down. There were 5 total departments, each headed by a department manager who answered directly to the store manager. They each had a separate contract with a union and unique pay scale. The departments were food, apparel, home, photo electronics, and central checkout, generally referred to as CCK. CCK covered the main bulk of registers for the store, and there were 2 checkout registers in home, 2 in apparel, and 4 in photo, and those were staffed from within those departments. CCK had, including the 4 self-check machines, a total of 19 check stands, plus the customer service desk, which could in theory handle 3 different transactions at a time. I was a CCK cashier. That meant that because of that whole different contracts through the union thing, I never stocked a shelf, I never moved freight, I never did anything anywhere in the store but run registers. I generally knew where things were kept, but if you had specific questions about a product, I most likely wouldn't have been able to answer them. I was a register jockey, and that was all I knew how to do. One fateful day during the holiday season, photo was horribly understaffed. There was a nasty virus making the rounds, and several photo employees were homesick with it. The photo manager, V, called my manager and asked if she had a cashier or two to spare to come to photo and just ring up purchases. CCK wasn't horribly busy, so my manager sent me over. V got me signed on to one of the registers and assured me that I would only be cashing people out. She told me that if anyone had any questions about anything, I could just call her or either of the other two employees, P and J, over and have them answer it. Same with if someone called the department with a question. I was to pass off the phone to a photo employee. They just needed me on the register so the three of them would be free to work the floor. Sounded like a fine setup to me. The next thing I knew, V and P had disappeared. I don't know if they were on their lunch breaks or what, but they certainly weren't anywhere in the department. That left me on the register and poor Jay working the floor alone during December. I'm sure you can imagine how well that turned out. I spent the next hour fielding endless questions I didn't know how to answer, desperately paging for V or P to come back or at least call the department, getting repeatedly bitched at for not knowing anything about the products of a department that I told the customers up front I'd never worked in before, and sending way too many customers over to poor Jay for help. Jay did the best he could, but he was only one person and there were never fewer than a dozen customers in the department the entire time I was there. And the phone, of course, was ringing off the hook with people wanting to know what sales were on, whether certain items were in stock, and what kind of digital camera would be the best to give a teenager for Christmas. All questions I didn't have a chance in hell of answering helpfully. An hour later, V and P came strolling back into the department and seemed really shocked to discover that Jay and I were overwhelmed. Fortunately, an extra photo employee showed up not long after, so I was sent back to my regular department, where I begged my manager to never loan me out to photo again. And our last story. HOA blames me for everything. Okay, this happened years ago, 1985 to be exact. I was 45 when this happened. 81 now. So after my second retirement, I started doing property management. I bought this 2,500 square foot luxury home with the sole intention of renting it out. Now, I didn't know how bad the HOA was, but when I became the owner, I soon found out. This all took place in 2 years' time. Karen would literally have a problem with everyone in the neighborhood. Trash cans left out? Fined. Loud music after 10 p.m.? Fined. Yard sale without permission? Fined. Removing dead plants and replanting without approval? You get fined. It went on and on like this. Now, anyone in the community could run for the HOA board, but the HOA board chose the president. 6 out of the 10 members on the board liked Karen, so she always kept her job. Her husband was in the medical field, so he made a lot of money. It got to a point to where she was called Queen Karen in this neighborhood, and her dishing out HOA fines. Now, I used to go in person to collect the rent because the people that rented my house were good friends of mine. I did this for months. So I would park my car by the front of the garage. I and my friends would have some music on, but it wasn't that loud. Queen Karen came over, driving her golf cart, and said, "Excuse me." Me. "Yeah?" "You have to turn that music down. It's too loud." I told her that it was 8 p.m. and music that's even loud can be played until 10. She wasn't having it and demanded that I do so. Now my friends and I kept the music going and were enjoying ourselves. She proceeded to get angry and fined me. Now, most people will just take the abuse and pay the fine. Not me. I went to the HOA board, contested the fine, and won. From that point on, Queen Karen made it her personal mission to destroy me. She would bitch and fuss about every little thing. I fought what I could, but I did end up paying for some of it. She also went after my tenants, which made things worse for me. I had to sit down with my friends one night to discuss the problem. When I parked my car, Queen Karen came over in her robe and said I have to park someone else. I did because I didn't want to start anything. We see her go back into her house and embrace a man that isn't her husband. We were being noisy and we came to the conclusion that she was cheating on her husband. Spoiler alert, she was. My friends and I told Queen Karen's husband I'm sure he did some investigating because 3 months later they divorced and he was moving his stuff out. Now, gossip said that Queen Karen got nothing because she was the one that cheated and she didn't have a job, so she wasn't entitled to the money. From this point on, Queen Karen had a massive decline in the quality of life that she had. She sold her car and got a cheaper one. She adopted different dressing habits. But even after the divorce, she never got a job and was still living somewhat better than everyone else. Fast forward to 1986. In February, Queen Karen and the HOA had been giving out fines for very obscure things and increased monthly dues. Having trash cans out a couple of hours early or after the trash man left would result in a fine. Targeting people that had older or dirty cars goes on and on. Me and the other people in the community were sick of the crap that she and the HOA were pulling. So at the next meeting, we voiced our concerns. Queen Karen said that the community had been falling behind on repairs and that the dues and increases in fines were necessary, especially if people weren't maintaining their own property. She said that it was in the yearly budget and that we should have read it. The other PO'd residents and I go to read the statement. Now, none of us read it because we take it as junk mail and disregard it, but we read the whole statement cover to cover. Queen had increased the HOA budget 15%, and where that extra money was going remained unknown. We went over to her house the next day and demanded to know where the extra money was being spent, but she refused several times. She closed the door and went back to watching TV. We filed a joint lawsuit to find out where the money was going. In June, we found out. Cue the revenge. Queen Karen was living off HOA fines and dues. The increase is because she was running out of money. She still didn't have a job, so she embezzled from the HOA so she wouldn't have to get a job. She gets busted. We call the police for her embezzling the money. She was charged with fraud and extortion. The neighbors and I filed a joint lawsuit against Karen to get reimbursement as well. Because she had no money, she had to mortgage her house to pay us all. She later went to federal prison for 6 years with no parole. Because she went away, no one was paying on her house, the bank foreclosed on it, and it was bought by someone else. So when she got out in 1992, she was homeless. Honestly, the majority of us didn't want to ruin her life like this. Had she toned down the excessive fines, we would have let her be. But she had to double down and steal from us because she didn't want to get a job like everyone else. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.